Hi, YouTube fans. This is Matt of Post-April 6th YouTube channel. Where I currently am is approximately across the street from 1633 or 1632 North Fillmore, because it's right in between East 16th Avenue and East 17th Avenue, and 17th Avenue is that direction. In fact, I'll give you a better demonstration. I'll zoom in on it. Okay, I know that it's a little bit blurry, but that's the best I can do. There we go. Yeah, that's about as clear as it's going to get. That's what it looks like. And what this location used to be prior to roughly about 2004 was a vacated, totally empty and abandoned building that used to be Mercy Hospital. And, well, I better keep going so I don't get cited by Neighborhood Watch or some other organization. Better start walking. Okay. What this Mercy Hospital was in existence, as far as the history of Mercy Hospital, which now has been defunct and is in a different ownership situation, because I think it merged with St. Anthony's Hospital in Lakewood, which is way down that way in the northwest area. Okay, so Mercy Hospital was in existence from 1901 to 1999. That's almost 100 years. And it wasn't always at this location. This was the last location. And if you were to take a glance at the digital images or still photos that I included in the beginning part of this YouTube vlog, those were buildings that once were Mercy Hospital. Now, here's a personal significance about Mercy Hospital. My grandmother, it would be my mother's mother, and my grandmother, also what would be a maternal grandmother, Leona. I believe her middle name was pronounced Celeste or Celeste. PIERCEALL-PIKE, and she went by Odie, O-D-I-E, kind of like the dog sidekick in the cartoon series and animated cartoon films of Garfield, which was drawn and created by Jim Davis, he's still with us. Jim Davis is still alive, but he's retired, and he's keeping to himself. He's 80 years old, and he's living in a part of more smaller, more rural, less populated part of Indiana. I believe it's Albany. But if you find Jim Davis's address, don't write him a letter unless you want to think very carefully about it. I strongly suggest you don't. I strongly suggest you find out through AI how to get a hold of him. Okay, back to my grandmother. My grandmother was sick. She was suffering from a serious hypochondriac, health-related problems. She was a smoker. And I could never outright prove it, my mother strongly feels this way. She was an alcoholic. Yes. She was born on the 101 years to the day before I got hit by a car, which was, and I'm talking about the date of her birth, not the date of when I was hit by a car, April 6th, 1910. And I do not know this for sure, but it might have been Hannibal, Missouri. If it wasn't Hannibal, Missouri, it was some area of Missouri that might have been near Hannibal, Missouri. I'll have to go back and look at the death certificate for her. And on February 6th, 1979, when I was only 5 years old, I was being babysitted by my brother and a good friend of my sister Michelle's friend named Carolyn at their house, at Mac and Odie's house, and I got to eat a nice little not a quarter pounder, but the smaller size of a junior, I guess it would be called like a junior cheeseburger with onions, and small fries and whatever soft drink. And then about roughly 3 hours later, my mom and dad come to pick me up to take me home, and they tell me the sad news that she'd passed away. She was laying in Mercy Hospital after being transported from the nursing home that she was at into Mercy because she was feeling really sick. And she was in Mercy Hospital for approximately 2 days, three at the most, and on the third day, she died. The official cause of death for Leona Pike, or Odie, was depression, because I don't think they did an autopsy on her. What my mother told me was that there was no reason to have a autopsy performed onto her because of this. The hospital knew that it was a blood clot that went from the leg to her brain. Now that may not be true, but what my mother told me, there's a good possibility it is true, if any of this makes any sense. And nowadays, this area of Denver, Colorado, yes, there are some of the old buildings that were built prior to 1979. They were built between the 1940s, the 1950s, and the early 1960s. Are still here, and they've been well taken care of. They probably had some remodeling or some facelifts done to them. But if you want to rent an apartment or a studio unit, a one-bedroom apartment or a studio unit, the rent is going to range between, and I kid you not, $975 to $1,400 a month for a studio or a one-bedroom. For a two-bedroom, probably at least $1,600 a month to over $2,000. And everybody's like, "Oh, that's as bad as LA." Not quite. In LA, it's going to be even higher than that, higher than what I just said. In Los Angeles, the cheapest studio apartment, unless it's a unit that is less than 200 square feet, it's probably going to cost at least $1,150 a month, or as high as this much, $1,700 a month. Yes, a one bedroom, depending on what part of Los Angeles and the, LA Metro, you know what I mean, is going to cost between $1,275 and this much, $2,500 a month, or even higher than $2,500 a month. Yes. And a two bedroom is probably going to cost, okay, I've gotten just a touch past the southwest street corner of 16th and Fillmore. Okay, apartment prices in Los Angeles for a two bedroom, one bath, or two bedroom, two bathroom is going to be between $1,650 to over $3,000 frickin' dollars. Yep. So, I hope all of you have enjoyed this vlog, and I will be deciding soon whether to have to do more filming towards this particular vlog, or whether to end it. So please stay tuned. Thank you. Okay, I am back again. I've decided to do some more filming. Now, what I'm going to discuss is I'm going to talk about my great-grandmother, Leona. I thought it was Celeste, but it's Celestine. Leona Celestine PIERCEALL-PIKE. And the city that she was born in may or may not have been close to Hannibal. I know this for sure, though. It's Monroe City, Missouri. Yes. And her father's name was Richard Pearsall, and her mother's name was Alice Spaulding Pearsall. Now, when what would have been my great-grandparents and her parents, when they were born, meaning Richard Pearsall and Alice Spaulding Pearsall, I don't know. I know this much for sure, though. It was before 1901. That's for sure. It was, my guess is, somewhere between, they were both born between the years 1889 and 1895. Okay. Now, about Leona Pearsall herself. I'll give you a brief history. My mother said that she was a nurse's aide or a nurse. For how long she was, I don't know. It was likely between, let's see, she was born 1910, 1920. It was somewhere between the 1930s and the 1940s. I know that much. But again, how long between the time between the 19 and the 30s that she was a nurse, I don't know. She married my grandfather. His real name was John Bernard Pike, and he went by Mac. He liked to be called Mac. In fact, I got a document, and I'm going to look that up really quick. I'll be right back. It was July 6th, 1935. That was 90 years ago. Wow. And it was in Monroe City. And somewhere along the line, they moved from Monroe City to Hannibal. And in 1936, my Aunt Roseanne was born. Or what would have been my aunt, because see my Roseanne died young in a fatal car accident in 1969. And what was even sadder about the fact that she died was she had no husband. It was due to the fact that the husband, named Charles, I'm sorry, I really don't like that man at all. This Charles, well, I'll go ahead and say his last name. I really shouldn't, but I will. Charles Bickford Sr. He, sorry for those antics. He deserted her somewhere between early 1960 or excuse me, late 1960 or early 1961. And Roseanne made a fairly decent amount of money working for Sears as a curtain installing specialist. In fact, she was inside a van that was a 60s Dodge or Ford that got very badly wrecked, and she was very, very badly hurt. I mean, she broke her neck and she broke several bones in her body and she died. I'm referring to Roseanne. And my mother was very, very sad. And she just married my dad. And I better not say the exact address of where they were living, but I'll tell you this much. It was somewhere 6 miles away from Disneyland in Orange County, LA Metro. Yeah. And a month after this happened, and my mother went back to live in Littleton with her parents at a nice house that Mac built. Then a month later, he wound everything down and he sold some things he didn't want to take with him, and he loaded up a U-Haul, and they moved to live with my grandparents between September 1969 and after my dad saved up enough money after he got a job at a diesel repair business company that I'm not going to even mention because my dad didn't like that guy one frickin' bit. I mean, he was a drunk. I'm referring to my dad's boss. The man was a drunk, and the guy was nothing but a mouthy a-hole. He really was. And then in February of 1970, my dad got ownership of a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a basement. Okay, so let me get back to John and Leona Pike after they got married. A year after they got married in 1935, they moved to most likely Hannibal. And in 1936, they gave birth to Roseanne. And John was, or Mac was making pretty good money as a construction worker, and for a company that may have been called Mead and Mount or something like that. And on a certain date Well, I'll go ahead and say it because my mother's deceased. My mother, Alice Catherine Pike, was born in Hannibal, and 1 year later, they moved to, because the way I'm going to explain this is there's two different stories about what I heard. Story number one is, or explanation number one, I should say, not story. Possible fact number one. Possible fact number one is they moved to Denver, and they lived in a nice one bedroom, one bath, or 2 bedroom, 1 bath apartment. And if they didn't move there, this is a possibility of fact number two, alternate version. They moved to Colorado Springs for at least 6 months to a year, and then after 6 months to a year, they moved to Denver. Now, which side of what happened, when, and which way, what exact way things went, I don't know for sure. And I'm not going to ask my dad because he don't know. I mean, this was, this happened over 80 years ago. My dad didn't meet my mother until she was 26 and he was 22. Yeah, back in 1966. Now, let me go ahead and discuss Leona's cause of death. Now, as I've already mentioned before, an autopsy was not done. But it says immediate cause of death. And this is in part one of immediate cause of death. Pulmonary embolism. I believe that to probably be highly likely that that's true. It may not have been what my mother said to me was, because she claimed it was a blood clot that went from his leg, went from her leg to her brain. And it says in part 3, which means, because right above where the doctor or the official that wrote this down, if he wasn't a doctor, clinical person, you know what I mean? It was bronchitis, depression, meaning an acute case of, it wasn't just it wasn't just a mild case of bronchitis or, an average case of bronchitis. It was pretty serious, meaning it was, if it actually was bronchitis, the bronchitis led to her death. I don't believe the part about the bronchitis. I personally think it was more likely pulmonary embolism, or it was what my mother said. A blood clot went from her leg to her brain. Which one actually truthfully happened, we'll never know, because, again, an autopsy was not performed. It states it. Yeah, it states it right there. You can see it. And as for me, 2 to 3 days later, a funeral was held at St. Mary's Catholic Church. Or actually, you know what? It didn't quite go like that. She was Catholic. I'm referring to Leona Pike, or Odie Pike. I think what actually could have happened, because I've been to funerals for people who are devout Catholics. There was the funeral at Drinkwine Mortuary, and then later on that day there was a rosary. at the St. Mary's Catholic Church. Yes. That's probably more likely what actually happened, to be honest. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's probably what happened. And then the next day after that, there was a cemetery burial ceremony at the cemetery she was buried at. I think they might call that a wake. And I had that day off, and I think the next day off, and then I had to return back to school after that. Because for me, what was going on was I would spend part of the day in kindergarten and the second half of the day in special ed with a special ed teacher. And because I had a learning disability, Asperger autism, I wasn't mature enough to become a kindergarten graduate. So I had to be a second year kindergartner. Yes, it's true. And how they did things when it was the second day of being a second time kindergartner. The first part of the day I was in special ed. The second half of the day I was in kindergarten class. And on Fridays I only had a half day because right around lunchtime my mother would come pick me up and she would take me to go see the child psychologist. Hey, that's the way they did things back then, because I was hyper and I had some emotional problems because I lost my grandparents so young. And I also had some other things I was upset about that I'd rather not talk about. There was some things that I noticed about my brothers and sisters that made me upset. They weren't bad people, but they had some problems. Okay, I had to pause and think about this for a minute. The house that my deceased grandparents had was built somewhere between 1956 and 1959. It was located on, I can't say the exact address because I don't want somebody coming knocking on my door like this and have a serious legal injunction filed against me. But I'll say this much. It was on the 1700 block of West Prentice Avenue in Littleton, Colorado. That's all I'm going to tell you. And the house was a 2-bedroom with a no, actually it was a 3-bedroom. It was the two. There were. Hold on, let me think about that again. Yeah, there were 2 bedrooms upstairs and there was 1 downstairs. Yeah, it was a 3-bedroom, and I think it was a 2-bathroom house. Yes, that's right. And the house only cost about $8,000 to $10,000 to build. And they sold after Leona passed away. One brother who was living there moved out, and another, I think it was my sister. I think it was either before that or after that. She went to go find somebody else to live with, where she was paying them rent. It was a house that I think that was in Montbello area. She lived in the basement. And my brother, who was the youngest of the three, I'll just call him JSB. Because if I say anything else, he's going to be very upset. He lived with my parents and me at the nice house we had in Castle Rock. And when he was about 2/3 of the way of being a senior at Douglas County High School, he dropped out. And right after he dropped out, because he saved up so much money, him and a friend named Eric moved to a nice apartment. Based on what I remember, it was near 6th Avenue and Chambers. Yeah. It was way out on the far edge of Aurora. It was somewhere between Peoria and Chambers, I know that much, on East 6th Avenue. And it was up on the 2nd or the 3rd floor. And that was a neat little apartment. I mean, it had a nice, the second part of a sectional couch. There was that dark brown, modernized looking 70s color instead of that ugly 70s color. And up on the entertainment stand, there was a hibachi color TV. And there was a stereo that was a Panasonic that had an 8-track insert. There was a good turntable. I think the turntable was Techniques. And it had good speakers. And it also had an Akai. I think this was a GX or GS 5000 7-inch reel-to-reel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he had some good records and some good 8-track tapes and some good reel-to-reels. It was cool. And then after he turned 21, I'm referring to JBS, he got some money from a trust fund. And he went and he got a down payment on a small 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom house on Dayton. It was between 12th and 14th Avenue in Aurora. Yeah. It was a neat little house. Had a fairly big front yard, but where the house was, there was no backyard because what was behind the house was an alleyway between the two streets. Yeah. And I had a lot of fun going there too. And he met a nice live-in girlfriend after he'd been living there for a while. And then he got really heavily in debt, and he made a profit on the house because of all the fixing up that he did. I mean, he didn't do a lot, but he did enough that when he sold the house, he got a decent profit for sure because of the either what's called market value or median household values had increased significantly between late 1979 and late 1981. Yeah, he sold that house and then he moved to about 6th and Dayton to an apartment complex. Actually, it was somewhere between Alameda and about 2nd Avenue and Dayton in Aurora. Well, I've done quite a bit of talking, and I mean quite a bit. I hope all of you found this interesting. Thank you very much. And if you're watching for the first time and you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.